Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on Microsoft Dynamics SL, what's new in SL 2018. I want to give you just a couple quick housekeeping items that I'd like to mention here before we get started. All attendees are in listen-only mode. If you do have any questions today throughout the presentation, please submit those through the GoToWebinar question box. We will be answering those questions following the presentation. If something happens, we don't have enough time to get to all of your questions, when you are entering those questions into the GoToWebinar question box, those are getting recorded. So we'll have an output of those after today's session. And if we don't get to your questions, we certainly will be able to follow up with you and make sure we get those answered for you. So again, please use the question box. You do not have to wait till the end. You can put those questions in anytime throughout the presentation, and I'll be back around at the end to facilitate those questions. We are also recording today's presentation. You'll receive an email tomorrow with a link to this recording. We are fortunate today to have with us Jeff Suin. He's our Microsoft Dynamics SL Product Marketing Manager. He is going to be providing today's presentation. And again, I'll be back around to facilitate questions at the end. So I think that's pretty much everything from my end. So with that, Jeff, I will turn it over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Rocky, and thank you, everybody. For those new to the Velosio world, welcome. We are very excited to have you as customers in the Velosio world. So first of all, welcome, and thank you so much for coming along. And I know that you have those on the phone that have worked with Cindy in the past. You will continue to work with her, and we are very excited about the future for you. And today I'm very excited, as always, as you know, to talk about Dynamics. Specifically today, we're going to talk about Dynamics SL 2018, the latest release, which is about to come out. We are literally a month or so away from CU3 coming out. So that's today's topic. So what are we going to talk about today? Let's see if I can get my mouse to cooperate with me. There we go. So there's me, unfortunately. Oh, wow, it really caught up on me then. Let's see if I can get it to go backwards here. And there we go. So that's me, and today's discussion is about where we are with SL 2018. And again, the first question we wanted to talk to you about is, what does your upgrade look like? So I'm figuring a lot of people on this call are, 2015ers or 2011s that are still out there. And so at Velosio, the question we ask is, what is your next? And in my question, what does your upgrade look like next? So what is that going to mean to you? Well, I say this kind of funny, tongue-in-cheekly, but I say cloudy with a definite chance of cloud in your future. So I feel that the cloud is going to be a part of your future no matter where you go with Dynamics, whether you go and you upgrade to SL 2018 CU3 and you still have on-premise solutions. Great, that's perfectly fine. One of the things we'll talk about later in today is that maybe you might want to get rid of all those servers in the back office in your office that you're keeping track of and maintaining. Maybe you want to get rid of them and you want to put SL in the cloud. One of the benefits of coming to Velosio is that they have something called the Stratos cloud solution, which is a proven solution that's hosting Dynamics SL customers today. And it's a great way to kind of alleviate you having to go ahead and maintain servers and make sure things are up and running and keeping things patched and all that stuff. You take all that headache of maintaining a server and then we put it up on Velosio, and Velosio takes care of that by hosting it in the Microsoft cloud, the cloud that we all know we can trust and use. Now, another thing that we'll talk about very lightly today, but you'll hopefully have noticed that we're having another webinar coming out, is there are 3 solutions, and I'll talk very lightly about them today because we're going to do a whole deep dive on this next. Microsoft's Power BI, Power Apps and Flow. Hopefully you've heard me talk about these. These are 3 cloud solutions that connect to your Dynamics SL today, no matter whether you're on-premise or in the cloud. These solutions can connect to Dynamics SL today, and you can start taking advantage of those. Or if you decide that you're interested in moving to the cloud, to a full cloud solution in the Dynamics world, whatever you say. And that's why I say, again, it's cloudy with a definite chance of cloud in your future, because no matter what you choose, whether you just say on-premise, host your solution in the cloud, you're going to start using a solution like Power Apps and Flow that's going to be in the cloud. So you're going to start taking advantage of that. And the benefit to us as SL users is that we get more access to the SL data that we need and the places that we need it. So it's a great, great opportunity here for you now as you're looking to upgrade as to, well, what does that mean to me? All right, so what is our agenda today? Let's go through it. We're going to talk about our life cycle. Hopefully you're aware of this. We'll talk about the features that have come out so far. As you know, this is a very different format for us. Usually I'm here, when SL28 came, I would touting all the new features and we would go away for a few years and come back in a few years later with some new features. We've changed that idea because we know that we need to be more responsive to your needs as customers. So when someone comes to me with a great suggestion, I don't want to say, hey, that's great, I'll talk to you in a couple of years. I want to be able to look at those and be able to implement them. And you're going to see that when I go through all the features that have happened already and the ones that are getting ready to release here with CU3. We'll talk about web apps real briefly. We'll talk about a little bit about the Power Suite as well as our roadmap, and then kind of give you some go-to items. Now that you've heard about what's happening in SL and the things that are great things that are coming out, what are the next steps for me? And so we'll go through those as well. As Rocky said, if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to go ahead and type those in, and whether we have time set aside to get to them, but if we don't, we have those recorded and we can move forward with them. All right, so where are we? What does lifecycle mean? Well, today the idea of lifecycle means that a SL product or any other Dynamics product generally has a 5 years of mainstream support and 5 years of extended support. So what does that mean? Well, for example, if you're an SL 2018 or soon to be SL 2018 CU3, you have mainstream support for that version of SL through 2023. So we've got a good amount of time right now to be on that. And then you get extended support through 2028. So what's the difference between mainstream and extended? Hopefully you've heard this before, but not when you are in a mainstream product that is in mainstream support, you can get hot fixes. So when you find an issue and we need to address it, we can go ahead and do that. With year-end updates, there are some year-end updates that are coming out that they're working on right now. The government seems to always have these last-minute changes, and we're working on them right now. So because you're on SL 2018, you will be able to get access to that. Now, so that means that if you're in 2018 or 2015, you get this. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that for SL 2015, you're about to leave mainstream support here just in a few months. So in January of next year, we go from mainstream to extended support. You get another 5 years, but when you're in extended support, you no longer get any hot fixes. So if you find an issue in 2015, it's not going to get fixed in 2015 anymore. It'll probably, if it really is still an issue, it would be something that we would add on to 2018. And then there are no year-end updates starting after this year. So again, this is definitely the right time. If you're in 2015 right now or 2011, this is the perfect time to start planning your upgrade for the year going forward. And then once you get beyond extended support, you get to having no support where support has ended. That means there's no ability to contact Microsoft directly. Now I think you are using Velosio or in the past using another company, so you can still get support, but basically Microsoft stops supporting those solutions once it gets past that life cycle. So take a look, take a snapshot, see where you are in that process. Again, if you're in 2015, this is the perfect time to start planning your upgrade for the following year. All right, so let's go through the enhancements. What are the new things that are in SL 2018? And I've kind of broken them up because as we keep on updating this presentation, I keep on adding new features the way it's broken up right now. The first thing is the menu system. Sometimes the more things change, the more they go back to the way we were before. I think, was it 7, I think? We had single color icons. We've had color icons, but for some reason we're back to single color icons. So I only show you this so you'll know you're on 2018 because that's what the icons come out of the box today. The next thing is let's talk about a long time ask that I've had in the system. It is around approvals. So people are in the system, they're pushing voucher and adjustment entries into the system. So Jeff is in charge of doing data entry and Rocky is my boss. And Rocky can say to me, hey, Jeff, listen, do me a favor. we've had some issues with data entry. Would you mind not releasing the batches until I get a chance to look at them? So today, if you're in 2015 or earlier, it would be more of a trust model. So I trust that Jeff is not going to, he's going to do what I told him to do and not release them, which is nice. And let's hope that Jeff listens. But the idea here is that we want to be able to have it so that when we come into the screen, Jeff will now, we can turn on a new approval process. So what happens is if he comes into the screen, you'll see that there's this new option that says submit for approval. So hold, release now, release later, submit for approval. So what will happen if I try to release now, it's gonna say, I'm sorry, you've turned on the approval process, so I can't allow you to release it right now. So it's gonna say that, and basically it stops Jeff from being able to move forward. So the only thing that I really can do, I could keep it on hold and come into it later, but the real next thing that I would be able to do is actually come into it, change it to submit for approval, click on finish, and then it goes and it is submitted for approval. Now we have a new status. You're used to H for hold and U for unposted and P for posted and so forth. There's a new status called W, and I'd say that is waiting to be reviewed or approved or rejected, whatever it happens to, but it's in a W state of waiting to be approved at this time. So when that happens, how do we actually approve it? Well, there's actually 3 different ways that we've built into the system as to how you can approve it. Now, the old-fashioned way would be that I would come into the screen as an approver, and because it looks at who I am and it says Jeff, or in this case, I would be logged in as Rocky. Rocky would come into the screen. It would see that he is an approver, and some things would start showing up. For example, this ability to approve each document one at a time. So I could come into the screen, choose to approve each document one at a time, or I could go, which I prefer, is just to do the entire batch. Now, as a side note, if you are an approver and you're in the screen, you do have the capability of fully editing it. So if I chose the wrong sub-account in line item number 2, it is up to me to choose whether I'm going to make that adjustment myself as the approver or I'm going to reject it to Jeff and say, Jeff, you need to fix this and get it resubmitted. So that is very, very possible. So I also have the ability to put a reason why. Usually used when I'm going to reject as to why, but again, you can put that information in as well. Now, once that is approved, you see that there is a new status. The status went from W for waiting to approved. Now, what that means is for Jeff as the end user, when he comes into the screen, he will see, oh, okay, look, there are some items out there that have been approved, and now everything works normally. Now I can do a release now, release later. The normal options are for there, and then I can go ahead and process this batch. So great new functionality. Now I told you that there are 3 ways to approve. I've shown you one. We're going to briefly touch on it, and we'll go into more details of this in our next session coming up. But one way is through a process called flow. So flow is, think of it, it has many different functions, from anywhere from copying data and migrating data from one to another and moving things around. But one of the things it can do is it can give you notifications, and it can also has built-in an approval process. So what I'm showing you here is once that went ahead and I submitted it for approval, there's a process that runs and it finds anything that needs approval, and then it emails the appropriate people to let them know it needs their approval. So it's telling me when it was created. It's giving me right now the batch information. So this is an accounts payable batch. The total amount is $125. And inside there are 2 documents. One's for 50, one's for 75. Here's the vendors. If I happen to be on a machine that's connected to our Dynamics SL system, then I can click on the link and it will open up Dynamics SL. We can actually view the actual entry. Or if the information you have here is enough, you can choose to approve or reject it right inside of the email. Something that we've always wanted. We want to have it so that when Rocky's out traveling and he wants to approve things, he doesn't have to go back to the office. He literally has to pick up his phone. Assuming we're going to put all the information he needs inside that email, he can click approve and he's done. Everything is done. He doesn't need to log into SL. Hitting that approve button is the equivalent of going in and approving the item. So a perfect solution. Again, I'm getting emails, I'm approving, I'm moving forward. Now, another way, there's another feature that we'll talk about in an upcoming called Power Apps. And Power Apps let us do something similar to a flow where you're getting email notifications, but we can create actual screens that interact with our Dynamics SL data. So what we've done is we've created a review screen that I can run on my tablet or on my phone or whatever device I have remotely. And it allows me to connect and view items out there. Now, what I'm seeing now is all the batches that are in the system. And I'm also seeing that these are just the batches that I'm able to approve. And because I'm able to approve them, the little buttons of approve or reject show up. I can choose to approve it. Again, don't need to log in SL. I can do it all remotely. Again, great solutions, Flow, Power Apps. We'll talk about Power BI a little bit later, but these are the solutions that we're investing in heavily because we really feel that this is where it changes it. When you can get a notification about something happening in your system, no matter where you are, that changes the way you work because you're working smarter. And that's where we see Power BI, Power Apps, and Flow as being something great in your future. So approval-wise, how can we set up approvals? Well, right now we have it set up that you can have one level of approval or two levels of approval. It is up to you. Your approvals can be by group. So I could say anybody who gets to it in this group first will be the approver, or we can set it up that it's a specific person that is the approver. So you have the ability to do both. You can even do it that it's different approvals for one and different for the others. So that's how we can go ahead and set up our approvals. So that's exciting, very, very exciting. Now, the next item is around doing lookup lists. So when you're inside of Dynamics SL and you do a PV, as you probably are familiar with in the 2015 world, we changed the interface to be more like a quick query. That makes it easier for you to find things. So if you see on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see it's highlighted the word begins with. Well, classically in Dynamics SL, when you were in the PV screen and you did a lookup and you typed in the value T, in the column name, it would find the first entry wherever T was the beginning letter of the value of the field name. So that was in SL 2011 and earlier. And so in 2015, we changed it to when you typed in a value, it did something which you see on the left called a contains search. So it's saying find anywhere in the field name where the value ON exists. So you can see it brings up completely different types of information on the screen. Now, given that fact is that in 2015, you could only do a contains clause search, and prior to that, you could only do a begins clause. So enough people said, you know what, Jeff, we like them both. We see benefits in different areas of the product. Could you bring back the option or add in the option to choose whichever one I want? And that's exactly what we did. So now you have the ability on the fly to choose whether you're going to do a contain search or a begins search. Now with this, how do you set it up? Well, inside of the user maintenance screen, an admin can go in and set up what your default behavior will be. And in fact, we got a lot of feedback on this and they gave us some new ideas. And in CU3, you're going to see another enhancement to this that makes setting this up even easier. So you'll see that in just a second. Now, the next thing was around projects. So obviously, project-based solution, we get a lot of enhancements around the project area. One area that came to us said, listen, invoice printing. A lot of times I just want to be able to print it out locally. I don't want to print it to my printer. I don't want to be prompted every time a new invoice comes up to create a new PDF or whatever I want to do. I just want to put it out to a directory and be done with it. Or even better, I'd like to take that document and I'd like to put it out to a doc share site for this manager. What's the benefit here? Where I can go ahead and do a preliminary invoice, put them out there for Jeff as Rocky as the manager. Rocky can go out to one site and see a printed out copy of what they were going to look like. Or I can even do the same thing based on the type of project. So for the specific project, it will create a site and it'll put all the preliminary invoices out there. So that's very, very exciting because you really opens up the possibilities of printing out these preliminary invoices and letting people actually view them. Same thing with the final printing. So whether you're choosing preliminary or final, you still have that same bit of functionality. So really, really nice enhancement around there. Now the next thing is around making a vendor inactive. Now for some reason, customers have been able to be inactive for as long as we can. We had the ability to make a vendor on hold, but it had kind of different ramifications. So we said, okay, if we've got customer inactive, let's go ahead and make vendor inactive. So what does that mean? If a vendor is inactive, it means no new purchase orders can be created for that vendor. It also means that there are no new voucher adjustment entries can be made and no checks can be cut. So think of the situation. So I'm Rocky's my vendor. I want to stop him today from being able to do any new work with him for some reason. I can stop that at any time. And what it means is that he will no longer show up in my lookup lists to create purchase orders or accounts payable entries. Now, what happens if I try to make a person inactive? Well, what will happen is when you try to make that vendor inactive, it's going to do some checks. So if it finds that that vendor is set up somewhere in the system and they just happen to have some purchase orders in the system, well, we're gonna let you go forward because we're hoping you've wanted to stop anything new happening, but you know that if you stop this now, no new purchase orders, but those existing purchase orders will never be able to be paid, but maybe that's what you wanna do right now. Also, right, there are certain situations we will not allow you to make them inactive. And that would be if they are set up as a default for a specific inventory item. So for example, if the vendor ABC is the default primary vendor for an inventory item, we don't want you to be able to make them inactive because if you were using that for other purposes, all of a sudden that's not going to work so well for you. So we will tell you what we're finding, let you go and make the adjustments and then make them inactive. Now, what's updated when you're doing an active? Oh, just a few screens, just a couple of them sitting out there. So all these screens are impacted by this. Now, one important note is just because I make them inactive, so if we're having issues with that vendor right now, I can make them inactive today at this time, but I literally can go turn around seconds, minutes, hours later and make them active again. So again, it is a good feature to use if you want to stop, halt all work. We're having problems with this vendor. Don't worry, they're not going to be stuck inactive forever unless you want them to, but don't think that you are doing something bad. It's okay to do that and we can turn them back on as you need them. All right, so a good enhancement there around our standard financials. The next was around a feature that hopefully I think all of us are very familiar with, the ability to do a reversing transaction in the journal transaction screen. So what does that mean? Well, if I'm in the journal transaction screen and I click on the button to the right of the batch number, it's going to give me the ability to do a reversing batch. Now, why would I want to do a reversing batch? Well, Jeff did his data entry and everything he did was completely wrong. And I want to reverse it and make it happen, make it like it never happened. So you have that capability and it basically makes an exact copy of that batch in reverse. And then the only thing you can do with it is release a batch. So the net of those two batches is nothing. You can also have it do a reversing batch and a brand new batch that's corrected and allows you to make edits. And you can also do a copy to it. Now, okay, Jeff, this sounds like we've had this for a while, and that is true. But one of the things that was out there is that when projects were involved with those journal transactions, the project information was not being updated. So when it was creating a credit, it was doing a negative to your project, and when it was doing a debit, it was doing a positive to your project. It's just because the way that things work in financials and the way it works in the project modules, they're kind of built a little bit differently. So we had to update the code so now when it knows when it's working with a project, how to properly update that project information. So again, maybe you shied away, maybe you weren't aware. Either way, I hope you take a look at this great new feature inside of Dynamics SL 2018. The next thing is around travel and expense report entry. We use things like web apps and ways to get time and expense into the system. A lot of times with expense, we're expecting you to do receipts. I know I have to. I need to put a receipt for everything that I'm putting my expense in for. You need to be able to do it the same. Now, sometimes people get expense reports approved that don't have attachments. And what we did here with the travel and expense report entry screen inside of the rich client is if it makes it all the way past the approval process where the accounting people are at, we have enabled the icons in the header and the detail to enable you to attach receipts after the fact. What's the scenario? The scenario is that Jeff put as an expense, Rocky quickly approved it, and then it got to the accounting department. They said, hey, Jeff, you didn't put your expenses in. So then Jeff can send the expense reports. They can attach it to this without having to go ahead and try to figure out how backhandedly you could get them attached, which you really couldn't. We've enabled these buttons at all time, no matter the status. So this means you can attach receipts at any time. Some other things, the SL homepage, again, a feature that was added, I think, back in SL7, it might be, or 2011, was the ability to view web pages inside of Dynamics SL. The screenshot here is showing you that in this case, I'm putting customer source up inside of here. And if you were to go to customer source right now, it's talking about probably SL 2018 CU2 is available. And in a month or so, it's going to let you know that CU3 is available. But again, it's an option that you can display information inside of the web app's main screen. Maybe it's an internal intranet site that's got pertinent information that you'd like people to know about. Well, what we've done here is to help promote, and we've actually enhanced this feature in the sense that now it supports more modern web pages. We've added a feature that makes it easier to copy those URLs and have everyone set up. So this is an admin item, but the idea behind it is that once I set up a website that I want everyone to use, once I have it set up, I click on this new copy button, it pulls up a new screen. I can put in either users or groups of users, click the begin processing button, it's going to copy that same URL across all the groups or all the users. So now everyone will start seeing that page. So it's just a nice way to make sure you're aware of the feature, but also a new way to make it easier for the people to start using and setting it up. Now let's go into, that's everything that happened in 2018 and CU1. Let's talk about what's happened in CU2. Now the first thing is we worked with consultants that are constantly in the field and working with people. And this specifically, we worked with people who are working with project customers. And what we talked to them about is like, what are some of the things that you are constantly having to do or that are kind of in your back pocket that help you when you're doing things around the project world? So what we got were a series of quick queries that will help with the following situations. One is to say, if I was to, in the project world, I was getting ready to run allocations, what are the things that will be subject to allocation if I ran the allocator today? So wouldn't it be great to know before you ran allocations if there's anything funky in the system? This is that query. The next thing, after you run allocations, well, show me what was created and show me what was created with the billing records that were allocated as well. So after you run allocations, let's show you what happened so you're aware of what's going in. One place where you can run a query to see what was run. The next is the billing transaction load analysis and to see what is eligible to be billed. And then lastly, let me know if I was going to run the financial and transaction transfer, what is eligible to be moved over. And in some cases, think about these things. It's going to show you things that might be stuck in there as well. So is there something that was maybe your allocation did not go ahead and capture correctly or is set up correctly for that? These are wonderful queries. These can be base queries that you can get to. And the idea is bringing it to you as the customer, the ability to look into allocations. Now, allocations is a wonderful process, very, very powerful. This enables you to go ahead and look at it and look at the things that are happening around it so you can go ahead and take better ownership of yourself and not have to rely on someone else to do that. All right, the next enhancement is going back to financials, is around the release jail batch screen. Now, if you look at it right now, and you look at the screen, there's two things that we've done. One is we added the period to post field. It was a common ask. It's like, hey, I go to the release jail batch thing to see the high level information. I can see, how much it's going to be, but what I'd really like to see is what period to post is this going to? So we went ahead and did that. Now, why people wanted it is because if Jeff fat fingered it and he put it 06/2025, well, then I want to be able to go into initialize mode if I'm given that proper rights. I want to be able to go to initialize mode, edit that field, change it to the right value, and then click the begin processing to release the batch. Now, what's the benefit? Well, if I've got like 50 batches to look at, and 49 of them or 48 of them look good, and I just need to change one or two, it'd be a lot easier if I could just go in, go to initialize mode, select the couple that are broken, fix them, put in the right values, hit begin processing. A lot easier than having to go into the batch and remember which batches I need to look at. Again, a much quicker, easier way to go ahead. And then you see the result is that when that batch got released, if I were to open up the journal transaction screen, you see that it did put the right period. So that was a nice ask, and you'll see in a little bit, we're going to continue with that here going forward here in CU3. Well, the next one is something near and dear to my heart. I do lots and lots of demos of the time entry screen, which we're continuing to enhance and great features in the web apps world. But one of the things that you have to do is before I can do a demo for time entry, I need to make sure my week maintenance is set up correctly. Now it's a fine enough screen, but there's a lot of what we call key fields in it. So sometimes data entry can get a little bit wackadoodle sometimes, and sometimes after entering a bunch of information, it loses its way, just the way that the way the screen is, uh, and then I lose everything. So what I said is, I said, for me and for also other people that need it as well, is I'd like it to make it a lot easier to go ahead and set up that week maintenance screen. So what did we do? Well, we've added a header to that. So the idea behind it is that instead of me having to manually type in every week, let's say we're doing weekly, or every day if we're doing daily, instead of you having to do that, why don't we let you put in a start date, an end date, tell me how frequently your time periods are going to be, and then go ahead and hit begin processing and let it generate for you automatically. What a wonderful concept. So I've told the start date is the 27th. It's going to go to the 1st of June. It's weekly. I hit begin processing. Boom. And if I scroll down here, sorry, I put it into the system, and then boom, what it does is it goes ahead and it creates a preview of what you just asked it to do. And the reason why we do this is because you might go ahead and generate and figure, oh, there's something wrong, I want to edit it. So that means that you can come into the screen, make edits, make changes to it, because this is a kind of like a preview of what you just asked me to do. And once you are happy with it and you've made your edits, you can click OK, and those entries get added onto the end of it. So I love it. I don't know if you've ever had to set up this screen, but if you are somebody, hopefully you're going, yay. I know I was. So we have the capabilities now to make setting up week maintenance a lot easier, because some people really, they wait to do week maintenance for each month or for every couple of months. This is going to make your life a million times easier. The next thing is around project end dates. So we've always had this idea of turning on whether a project is available. You see down here at the bottom of the screen, you can do it by modules, whether it's active and so forth. But we've always had this idea that there's an end date, a start date and an end date for a project. But end date really didn't mean anything. So if you were smart enough and you remember to go in and make sure that things were active and active and turn them on and off and so forth, there's a little bit of a administrative nightmare to be able to make sure everything is up and good. But if you actually put in a start date, let's say the start date was January, the end date was the end of this month, what we will do is we can actually set it up so when people try to do time and expense entry against these projects, that they are no longer available once you hit those dates. So that's big. I mean, that's a complete changer. So of course, if you don't want to do it, you can leave your end date validation set to none. You can set it to the project level where it's looking at a project and seeing as soon as that end date hits, or a task level, because each task could have its own end date. So what will happen is any time and expense entry that you're doing for a project that has reached or is past the end date will no longer show up. If it's at a task level, what it will do is if any task is still available, let's say we have 10 tasks and 2 of them are still available, that project is still going to show up, but the only tasks that will show up will be the 2 tasks that are still available at this time. I love it. I love it, love it, love it, because it really allows you more control and more detailed control. And again, you have to set that up once, and then you don't need to worry about maintenance. I'm going in and making sure it's there, or did we set it up? Where it happens, time entry, you see all the screens. It's also has been, and I should update, it has been added to the web apps as well. Obviously, it makes a lot of sense. So the web apps now respects in 2018 this idea of end date validation. So very excited about that capabilities as well. The next came around another project enhancement, invoice and adjustment posting. What we've had the ability to do in the past is above the red box, you could go ahead and choose which ones you want to post. So you could choose by sub-account, by biller, by invoice cutoff, and so forth. So you could choose all that information. People came back and said, you know, really a lot of times we'd like to add on top of that. I want it for select projects, or select invoices and adjustments that I'd like to choose to be posted. So you can now get to the details of that by selecting either the radio button for select projects, where you can choose as many projects, or the select invoice adjustments, where you can choose as many invoices and adjustments as you like. So really enhancing this screen to allow the end users to choose exactly what they want to post. And again, another great suggestion from customers like you. On the service call side, one of the things that was asked for many times is the idea of a quote. Now, the idea that the service call entry screen was built was once you choose a customer in a site, it pretty much locked it down and said, you've chosen the service call, so I'm not going to let you willy-nilly change the site. It's locked in. You chose that you're doing this for Portland, so that's what it is. Well, if I'm doing a quote though, that doesn't make sense, because I might think that I'm doing the quote for Portland when it turns out that we're actually doing it for Seattle. So in the quote status, the site ID becomes enabled, and you can change it around as frequently as you like until you go from quote to the next stage. So makes a lot of sense, and a great enhancement request that we got as well. And this is just showing that you can change. All right, so that's CU2. And now CU3 is getting ready to come out really shortly here in the next several months, but let me just generically say by the end of the year, CU3 will be coming out. And what have we done in here? Well, I'm going to highlight some of the enhancements, but a lot of things we did is after cranking through a bunch of new enhancements, we also wanted to address some of the hot fix requests that we have. So we did address a lot of the bigger hot fix requests and made sure that they were rolled into here. But of course, we wanted to continue with our function of adding new features as well. So one of the feedback that we got from that initial request, that they love the idea of being able to set a default begins with or default contains value, was that the only way that someone can set the begins with or contains is if you are an admin. And they're like, Jeff, that's great that you have it, but that's not where we keep track of it. Each end user wants to be able to choose whether their PB is begins with or ends with, or contains, excuse me. So we've added, as you see, a new drop-down box here in your options, and you can choose that you want to default your lookup list to the begins with, or you want to do it with the contains clause. So you have that capability right inside of SL in your standard options dialog. Click which one you want, click OK, click Save, and it is automatically going to be saved for you and set up. The next one, the next screen that we are going to add is another approval screen to the General Ledger Journal transaction screen. So another wonderful screen where a lot of people are set loose to do adjusting entries, where we want to be able to look at them before they go forward. Similar to what we just gone through with accounts payable, we want to do the same thing here with journal transaction. So we are going to have the ability to do it, to be able to do it approval on the screen, be able to update our flows, to be able to get flow notifications, and to be able to do it in a Power App as well. So you'll be able to do all those things that we talked about earlier in General Ledger as well. Now the next two came because we got such rave reviews for our General Ledger batch enhancement screen. So the release GL batch screen enabled us to view the period of post and also then be able to edit it. We've added that same capabilities to the accounts payable module, as well as the accounts receivable batch entry release batch screens. So again, both of those will have that capabilities as well. And again, that's you guys telling us what you like, what you need, and us basically reacting to those needs. The next one was the project end date validation, is taking it beyond just the time and expense entry screens and taking it into the key screens in GL, AP, and AR. So the journal transaction screen will now be able to be turned on if you want. And I don't have the screenshot here, but you'll be able to choose whether or not you want end date validation to happen in those screens, and those screens are not. So we are enabling you to turn on end date validation in the journal transaction, in the invoice and memo, or in the voucher adjustment entry screen. You will see more of this soon here. The final slides for SL CU3 are being finalized as we speak. So if you come to the Seattle show, you'll see more information about that, but that's a exciting one to be able to extend that functionality out. And last but not least, as far as new feature functionality, is taking our Power BI story about projects and pushing it out to another area. We're coming up with 5 different customer-based dashboards that can be used to view your Dynamics SL information. So we will have those available. And again, I'll be able to show more of them off when I see you in Seattle. So some great things that we continue to do. We are now, as we are in the process of finishing up CU3, we will then start working on the next release, which will come out in the halfway mark of next year as well, very similar to what we had this year as well. And then with the SL 2018 release is our continued investment in that Power Suite. Again, I'm just giving you an idea in case you haven't seen these, the Power BI dashboards that we have for project, the new one we've created for customers, the approval emails that I quickly showed you, notification emails. Think about all those situations where you've always wanted to know when something happens to a certain customer or a balance goes over a certain amount. You've always wanted to be able to get notified. Now you can. Power Apps being able to approve things in an application, remote, not inside of SL, looking at customer balances. And we'll show you in more detail in our next presentation about Power Apps and the fact that Power Apps are about tasks. What is that little task that you'd love to be able to do so you don't have to log into SL to do it, whether it's looking up information, finding information, whatever it happens to be. We'll talk more about that in next session. But again, great functionality. And this is the real game changers because we'll continue to enhance the product, but this to me are the game changers that are going to change the way that you work inside the company. The next is to talk about our other areas, the SL web apps. So hopefully you're familiar with them, but at a real high level, this is our remote access to Dynamics SL. What do? We actually have created websites that interact with your Dynamics SL screens. The screens are written in something called HTML5, which, not to get too technical, it just means it's written in a language that any device can read, whether it's a Microsoft device, an Apple device, an Android device. Any of the devices can go on the web and they can access web apps. So that's the big appeal of creating web apps, is because they can be anything. They can be accessed on anything that you need. Now, as far as what is available, obviously in the dark blue, you're going to see a lot, and in the slightly light blue, you're going to see a lot of project functionality. If you haven't seen these before, definitely get with your CSM. We can talk to you about these, but it's everything from, on the project side, setting up a project, setting up a rate for that resource, assigning that resource, creating a project, assigning that resource to the project, going ahead and doing project change entry, charge entries, doing change orders, being able to enter your time and expense, approving those items, looking at the status of your time cards, all the project items. Now, if you've looked at it in the past, I will say there has been some recent enhancements to the product to handle large number of users. So we've got some companies that have hundreds and hundreds of users. We've made some work with them on some enhancements to make that a little bit easier for them and to address some of those issues. So if you haven't looked at it before, or you've shied away because you might have had an issue, we have addressed it and we're very excited about that. The next in the light blue is employee utilization and employee resource planning, is the ability to look and say, Jeff needs to be 60% billable, and how is he doing against that, and being able to actually schedule him out. Other items, being able to do things in the vendor maintenance, customer maintenance, and payroll employee maintenance, all those maintenance screens being accessed remotely with all the same functionality that you're used to seeing in SL. Being able to do an inventory lookup, reporting, a great functionality. A lot of people ask us, hey, I need certain people access to Dynamics SL. I don't want them logging to SL, but I've got people on the road that need to either want to access our quick query to look up data on the fly, or they want to be able to run reports. That is a huge area that we see people saying, yeah, that's exactly what I've needed. Check that functionality as well as being able to do things in our requisition item request screens, as well as payroll, and being able to add external links to different areas. There's a lot. I can't really do it justice in this few 4 minutes, but again, if you're interested, contact your CSM. I'd be happy to give you a demo on any of these different areas. Now, with web apps, we are constantly updating them. There is usually a new release approximately once a month, one for 2015 and one for 2018, where we're adding new feature functionality. We got some really neat enhancements that we got from a couple people. Just as a highlight, I'll probably let the cat out of the bag, but the one that I really like is you can now start setting what are the minimum number of hours that people need to work and put their time in for. So is it a requirement that people need to at least enter 40 hours per week so they stop putting in these time cards for 8 hours a week? They need to put in that they're actually, on vacation or where they're at. You can start doing that here with web apps coming here real shortly. So again, we are continuing to invest in new features, fixes, anything that comes up, and putting them out. Now, new features. We are continuing to add new features as you continue to see, and a lot of the things that I showed you today are from talking to customers just like yourselves. So my request to you is if you are in a situation where you're like, hey, Jeff, it's a situation we're in payables, we're in receivable, we're in project, and there's this, we'd love it, we could tweak this or change this slightly to make it work for us. And if it's something that's gonna make sense and it's gonna work for everyone, I'm really open to talking to you about it and putting it by the group and going ahead and see if we can get those things into the system. Note that a lot of the things that you're seeing, definitely web apps and some of the new items here in SL 2018 came from those exact conversations. So you do have an impact on what we do. We obviously have things we want to put in, but we also set aside time to make sure we're including the things that you as customers need to keep you happy in Dynamics SL. As far as a roadmap, as you guys know, probably where we're at here so far, the first came out in May of 2018. The first cumulative update was in November. The next one was in May. We're getting ready here for the third cumulative update coming here in Q4, and we'll continue with one next year as well. So we're continuing to invest in SL, continue SL features, as well as those Power Apps features as well. And the roadmap, here's the current roadmap. We basically can only go out 1 year, so this is not saying anything other than we're going to continue to develop, we're going to continue to add new features. So this year I've got CU2 and CU3 coming out. There will be 2 new releases next year for Dynamics SL, naming and releases to be determined, but again, that is continuing to go forward, so you can count on that is going to happen going forward here in 2020 and beyond. So coming back to the original slide, where do I see you with your upgrade? Again, think about all the great things you saw. We talked about, this should say CU3, but all these things in 2018, the things we continue to enhance. The next thing I want to take a few minutes is to talk to you about the cloud. Now, one of the things that we don't take into account is that, yes, many years or recently you purchased Dynamics SL for a set cost, but you may or may not be aware of that you are spending money on those servers every day that you have them. So one of the things that is on you is to make sure that they are up to date with the latest patches and so forth to make sure that they are secure. The benefit of moving to the cloud is that you reduce the security risk because it's being taken care of for you. You reduce costs because you're not having to actually run the servers. It promotes teamwork and innovation because people will be able to access it remotely. Your IT team will hopefully be happy because it's less for them to have to manage. The DSL server, is it up and running as you're making sure of it? Well, we don't have to worry about it. It's being hosted in the cloud and being taken care of. And it allows for greater integration into other Microsoft apps. So it is a great benefit for you as you're looking into your upgrade to say, does it make sense? Should I move to the cloud? And you're lucky because you've joined into Velosio, who has a Stratos cloud solution that's dedicated to hosting dynamic solutions like Microsoft Dynamics SL. So it's nothing that's built on the Microsoft technology, and it's built something that is being backed and supported to you through Velosio. Well, Jeff, that sounds kind of interesting, but what if I want to see, does it really make sense for me? Glad you asked. Velosio here has a cloud assessment that can be done. So basically, Velosio will work with you to understand your situation, understand what your needs are, and come up with a solution that's going to be best for you. So it is an assessment. How do you get there? Contact your CSM today about needing a cloud assessment, because, hey, we're looking to upgrade to SL 2018, but let us know, is on-premise the best way for us, the way we do things, or is the cloud potentially an option? So it definitely gives you that opportunity to look into that. Definitely contact your CSMs. That's Cindy, that's Ernie, that's Bob. Those are the people that you want to contact about looking into 2018, about upgrading, looking into the Stratos Cloud, anything that we talked about today, those are your go-to people. Those of you who are that are longtime Synergy folks that are here at Velosio now, you know Cindy very well. I know that she's very responsive. I do need to do a side note with Cindy. Cindy is going to be back in the office in November 4th. So if you ask for her today, she's not ignoring you. She's having a long a rest right now, but she will be back shortly after her vacation. But definitely contact them, let that information, let them know what you need, let them know the things that you're interested in. And hopefully today's session gave you enough of the great information of Dynamics SL that you're seeing. Lots of benefit. I can see what's going on with that. So with that, I did want to wrap up for now. I'm going to leave the names up here in case you're questioning it. With that, I'm going to bring Rocky back in so Rocky can give us some of the questions that maybe you had or maybe you haven't. So if you have any questions and you haven't put them into the chat right now, go ahead and ask those questions and Rocky can get them to me. If you're like me and you have questions afterwards, can't remember, I don't have a slide of that. You can email your CSM like Cindy, Ernie, or Bob, and they can get to me and I'd be happy to answer them after the session. With that, Rocky, if you could come back in and see if we have any questions.
All right, certainly, Jeff. Thank you. That was awesome. Great presentation there. We do have a few, so I'm going to just jump right into them here. And I'm going to read this one verbatim, so I make sure I don't get anything wrong. When reviewing JEs to approve post, is there a field that indicates that the JE is reversing? Would be nice to have next to the period to post field.
All right, so read that one more time because I think I got half. She's talking about doing journal
entries, I'm assuming. Yes.
And
So
being able to reverse.
Yeah. So when reviewing journal entries to approve /post, is there a field that indicates if the journal entry is reversing? Would be nice to have that next to the period to post field.
Good idea. I would say no, because that's a really good idea. So being able to do them, that's a really great idea. If you, I think we talked about my email address earlier, v-jsuwyn@microsoft.com, because I've got some questions for you based on what you just said. And but if you could email me and start a conversation with me, you're sparking some good thoughts in my head, and I like the idea. I want to ask you a few questions to see if we can enhance it and see if that's something we can add here in the future. But great suggestion. Thank you so much.
Great. Yeah, and we've got Paul's information too, Jeff. We can reach out to him as well. So
okay, good. Thank you. I'm sorry, I forgot you kept all that.
No worries. Second question: does an upgrade from CU2 to CU3 cause issues with customizations?
Great question. Yeah, the nice thing about going from 2018 CU2 to CU3 is that all we're doing is it really is just an overlay. So if the screens that we've enhanced are not screens that you have customizations on, then I'm going to say the answer is it's not going to impact you at all. I think the only screens that have changed would be the journal transaction screen. Because we've had to add things in for the approval and so forth. So customization wise, you might have a field that if you're customizing something in the header of that screen, you might have a little bit of it, but the rest of the things that we're doing are not impacting that. So that's really the only thing that's going to impact it. So look at the screens that we've enhanced. If you don't have any customization around any of those screens, you're going to be fine. Even if you do, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be fine as well. And that's really the way that our CUs are built. For example, as you said, I'm on CU2 already, Jeff. I see your new CU3 features. Can I just throw it on top of it? And the idea is yes, is we're not going to have to change everything. We are actually just building on top of it. It does not require a total uninstall and reinstall. It literally is just laying over top of what you already have. We install the new files to give you the new feature functionality and you move forward. So the idea is that it wouldn't be. Again, definitely talk to your CSM, or if you want to go through your CSM to ask me. If we haven't changed the screen that you've customized, you're going to be fine, and then you should be able to move forward from there. But great question as well. Great question.
All right, next one. Very specific question here.
Okay.
Will there finally be an aging inventory report? Does SL include Mexican laws for electronic invoicing? So this is about the Spanish overlay for SLCU3.
Okay, so the Spanish overlay is, it has been posted, and I'm actually I just checked with the team, I'm just verifying the location. So I'm getting ready to put out a notification that it is available. I just need to get the links to everybody. So was supposed to be done by the end of the month. I think we're here a little earlier. That is really specific. I don't know that off the top of my head. If you have a question on that specifically, then reach out to me directly, because I can't tell you that off the top of my head. I'm not familiar with it at the top of my head, but I can check with the team and see if that is available. But know that the SL 2018 Spanish overlay and Spanish overlay for web apps are available and for you to start using here. So thanks for stealing my thunder on that. But no, thanks for bringing that up, and I will make sure that if you emailed me directly, we can talk about that. So thank you so much.
Perfect. Okay, next question. Has the web apps line duplication problem been resolved?
Yes, so I know exactly what you're talking about. So I'm not sure what version you're on, but there was an issue with the duplicate items not being copied over, and there was also some settings that we added to choose exactly what should be duplicated and what should be defaulted. So that has changed. We've also changed and did some updates around the actual core services that make it so that when hundreds of people are in the system, they don't bump into each other anymore, which was an issue. Just the way it was built initially, the hundreds and hundreds of people, when you get hundreds and hundreds of people doing time entry, they were kind of bumping into each other sometimes unexpectedly, and we have fixed that. That was a huge find here earlier this year that we were excited to have. But specifically, if you want to talk about that specifically, again, my email address, v-jsuen@microsoft.com. Let's get specific so I can make sure we have addressed your specific issue. From what I understand, and the latest time I looked at the releases, that we have addressed any duplicate issues, but I will double check if you have a specific question and make sure it has been addressed. And if not, make sure it's going to get addressed.
Okay, perfect. That is all the questions we have right now. Let me give everybody just we've just got a couple more minutes left here before the top of the hour. I'll give everybody else just another minute to see if they've got anything else. And in the meantime, I wanted to reiterate what Jeff had said, and wanted to certainly welcome and thank you for attending all of the past Synergy clients. Welcome aboard here to Velosio, and wanted to put in a little bit of a marketing communications plug here. We certainly have these type of events and webinars throughout the year, every month. So I would encourage all of you to do two things. One, make sure you're visiting our events page, and that's just very simply at velosio.com/events. And the second thing I just wanted to mention quickly is we do have a weekly communication that goes out every Monday morning to all of our clients that has all of the latest news, information, updates, events like this, information about our upcoming Aspire Seattle event, and we call that our Power Your Next weekly communication. If you are not receiving that, please reach out to Cindy or Bob or Ernie, whoever your CSM is, and they can send you a link over to make sure that you get signed up for that. We try not to inundate everybody with a lot of different emails throughout the week. I think all of us, our inboxes are pretty full as it is, but we kind of consolidate everything into a nice weekly, every Monday morning format. So if you're interested in staying up to date on things, please reach out to your CSM and make sure you're signed up for that. So that is the marketing plug for the day. But it does not look like we've got any more questions. That's probably a testament, Jeff, to your great presentation. So
no, but everyone had great questions. So no, first of all, I thank them for actually listening, because that means they were definitely listening.
yes.
And again, as Rocky had said, if you need to contact me, hopefully I can say v-jsuen@microsoft.com. I definitely want to talk to everyone who put a question in to make sure I have answered it. And if I had some more questions about some of your enhancements, I'd love to take them all to the next step. So make sure we're addressing it, or make sure we're looking into a potential new feature to get what you need.
Okay, perfect. Well, I think we'll close with that then. So on behalf of Jeff and all of us here at Velosio, certainly want to thank you all again for attending. We hope to see you on the future event. We've got another one coming up here, as Jeff had mentioned, in a couple weeks. So please register for that if you haven't already. We, again, look forward to seeing you here in the future. So thank you again for attending, and have a great rest of your day. Bye now.